that sink in.
12 P's.
Prior proper planning prevents poor performance. And as we talk about the decisions we need to make as we are aging and moving toward the end of life, we want to make the proper decisions. We want to plan ahead and prevent the poor performance. Anybody have a loved one that got to the end of life and things just wasn't going the way that they should have gone because they didn't have nothing in order? You know why? Because if we fail to plan, we plan to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're talking about today. How to plan and get everything in order. And I'm going to say this. Getting our houses in order is a gift we give to our loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does it make it easier on us as we're going through the process, it spares our loved ones having to figure stuff out, fight between themselves. Anybody ever had a family feud and not trying to figure out what to do in the midst of a crisis situation? That's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So there's this prevailing thought that if we talk about our end of life wishes, we're gonna make it happen. I got a news flash for you. Even if you don't talk about it, it's still gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remember, what did we say earlier? 1 out of 1 goes. So whether we have the conversation, as difficult as it may be, it's still going to happen. So I got a question. Can we talk?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I am having a real hard time standing up here, Stephanie, by this microphone, but I'm trying to be mindful that I know you are streaming. So all of you
I'll just move
should
closer.
have a booklet called Courage in Conversation. I'm not going to work in this booklet, in the back, you're going to find the forms. The advance directives, your healthcare power of attorney, your living will, and your organ donor designation. And not to add any insult to my brother, the attorney in the room, you don't need an attorney to fill this paperwork out. Your healthcare power of attorney is a do-it-yourself, fill-in-the-blank document that you only need a notary or 2 witnesses to make this a legally binding document. Now, all the other trust assets and estates and wills and all that stuff, y'all gonna need an attorney. But we can do this ourselves. Amen. And a notary or 2 witnesses, either or, and it becomes a legal binding document. Now, I'm also giving you another sheet, because we're going to talk about how do you pick the person that you want to be your healthcare power of attorney. Because here's the thing, you are designating the person that will speak on your behalf if you are ever unable to speak for yourself as it relates to your healthcare decisions. So this is a pretty important role that you're asking somebody to play. It's not always an easy decision to figure out and to ask somebody to do. That's why this booklet is called Courage in Conversation. Because it can be difficult to have the conversation, but it is absolutely necessary and worth it. So what you would do with this form, let's say you have 3 kids or 3 siblings or 3 friends that you're trying to determine between who do you want to be your healthcare power of attorney. You would just put their 3 names across the top, and then we're going to talk about who meets the criteria best. Okay. First and foremost, they have to meet the legal criteria in your state. So for most states, it means you have to at least be of age or older. So even though you may love that 15-year-old grandchild, my 15-year-old granddaughter, an amazing person, I can't think her as my husband. But she's not legal age. You're gonna be at least 18. So you need to have somebody who meets the legal criteria in your state.
I know you're but if you just have two witnesses, you don't have to have that.
Correct. We get here. All right. You want somebody who's willing to speak on your behalf. And somebody who will act on your wishes and separate their own feelings from yours. Why is this important? Because this person is going to be acting on your behalf. They're going to become your voice when you are unable to speak for yourself. You may be on a ventilator, you may be unconscious, you may have gotten to a place in your life journey where you're no longer able to speak. Your cognition may no longer be in a position for you to make decisions. To speak on your behalf. If you want somebody who's willing to set aside their own thoughts, their own feelings, and do what you want them. True story. I'm an organ donor. If you look on my driver's license, I look on the back and see the little teeny tiny writing that says organ donor. And I said something about it to a family member in conversation once, and they said, and I quote, "I'm not giving you organ away." Guess who's not my healthcare power of attorney? Because that person made it very clear that they were going to put their beliefs ahead of my own. And I personally believe that where I'm going, I'm not going to need all this stuff. And if it's going to help save somebody else, why not? Amen. All right. Typically, you want somebody that lives close by or could travel to be with you. Now, in the days now that we have FaceTime and Duo and Zoom and all these virtual meeting options, it's not as critical that they be right there with you. But keep in mind, this is a point in time in your journey where you cannot speak for yourself. You may be in a hospital or nursing homes. Do you want somebody that's in Alaska, or do you want somebody that's close by and can come be with you? So I would encourage you to give that some consideration. They need to know you well and understand what's important to you. Is it important for you to be here for another 20, 30, 40, 50? You want them to do everything possible? Or is it important to you? Just let me go be with Jesus. They have to know you well and understand what's important. For me, it's being able to donate my organs, whatever is needed, don't let somebody else. That's important. Now, it's going to be somebody that you trust in your life. Why am I saying that? They're making decisions on your behalf that could possibly mean it's time to go see the Lord. My godfather, before he passed away, was in the hospital in intensive care with the situation going on, and the doctors literally said, we could operate on him. He was 89 at the time. But we've never done it successfully for somebody his age. And even for somebody much younger, the odds aren't that great. Now, the blessing for me, my aunt, and my cousin, who were all his attorney, powers of attorney, we knew what he wanted. And more importantly, we know what he didn't. And that was to spend the rest of his life with and ventilators in hospitals or nursing homes. So we made the decision. The doctors know we're just going to let nature take its course. And they let the machines off. And let me just tell y'all something. If you've never been in a room when they turn the machines off, it's not like it is on TV. Amen. They don't just turn the switch and they go, boo. That's not how it is. Sometimes it takes a while. So that's why you need somebody that's willing to be there with you through that journey. All right. Now this is a key one. Remember I said courage in conversation? You want somebody that's willing to talk to you about sensitive issues now. So for my parents in the room, they have that one super sensitive child that every time you start to talk about what your issues are, they run out the door. That is not the person you want to be your healthcare power of attorney. Because if they can't talk to you now about what's sensitive, you're going to put them in the middle of a crisis, having to make decisions in front of healthcare professionals. They're not going to handle it well. So you want somebody who's willing to talk to you now. And you want somebody willing to be with you long into the future. So the 99-year-old grandmother, probably not. Now, we all know that tomorrow's not promised to any of us. So anything can happen to anyone at any given moment. We know that. But you want to pick the person that's likely to survive beyond you, who will still be here when you need that person, if you need that person, potentially 10, 15, 20 years. Okay? You want to pick somebody who's going to handle conflicting opinions between family members, friends, and medical personnel, and who can be a strong advocate in the face of an unresponsive doctor or institution. We got to go and advocate for our loved ones many times. And you need somebody who you know is willing to do that for you. Doctors, healthcare professionals, hospitals, they're all in business to do what? Make money. And they make money by healing us. So I'm not taking away from that. Their care, their medical treatment of us is what drives their revenue. So they're going to try to do everything that they can for as long as they can. Well, what if your desire is, I don't want anything else? But the healthcare professionals keep going, well, Brother Sam, we could do this and we could try this, and we could do this and we could do that. And I'm saying, no, that's not what they want. You need somebody who can say, no. We had a situation, one of my cousins who was dealing with a diagnosis, and the doctors had pretty much said they had done most everything. But they kept coming back trying to say, well, we could try one more thing. Well, if we could just do this, well, if we could just do that. And I said to the doctor, I said, the time we looked in the palliative care hospice, and the doctor said, that's not a bad idea. Why didn't you say that in the first place? Feed the family with all these options and ideas. They'll keep going down that road as long as we let them go down. So we need somebody who's willing to say, no, this is not what they would want. So your power of attorney for health. And let me just say this, because I probably didn't say it up front. This document only covers your healthcare decisions if you are unable to speak for yourself. It does not allow your healthcare power of attorney to step in and overrule what you want for yourself. I know sometimes our children think because they got this piece of paper in their hand that they get to run the show. And you right there. They don't get to do that. That's not what that paper says. That paper is only when you cannot speak for yourself. It also has absolutely nothing to do with any of your possessions, your bank accounts, none of that. That's a whole separate document, general verbal power of attorney. And Brother Sam's nodding his head. He can tell you all about it. But I'm not going to go down that road. But you need to be very careful in selecting that person because they can act simultaneously. They can go out and open bank accounts in your name. They can get loans on your property in your name. So you really want to be very. Okay. All right. So yes. I'll repeat the question. Don't worry. So this is why it's very important for us to get this paperwork done now, sooner rather than later. Because when I tell you that this is a gift you give to your loved ones, this paperwork is what allows you to tell that doctor, good doggone well, that she doesn't know what day it is today. She doesn't know who you are. She has no idea what country she's living in and is not able to make sound decisions. But I have the healthcare power of attorney. In this instance, you can also request an ethics consult with the hospital, so that at least two doctors have to come in and declare that person is or is not capable of making decisions.
Also, with your power of attorney, that you fill out the personal living. That person with the power of attorney while they're living, when they pass away and they have again, they have no more power of attorney over that person.
Power of attorney ceases at the point of death, whether that's a healthcare power of attorney or a general power of attorney. We're the same.
We go back to Ms. Hurd's question. If the person is incompetent before the power of attorney is established, within, as you mentioned earlier, so the power of attorney, they have to be 18 or older and competent. So if the person is incompetent at the time that they're establishing it, then the best route to go is
Guardianship. Absolutely. So to Brother Sam's point, if the person is already beyond the point of being able to fill out documentation, to name someone as a healthcare power of attorney because they may be dealing with some kind of cognitive impairment and they cannot make decisions, your next route is guardianship. It's a process, but let me tell you, it's a process that is well worth investing and following to make sure that strangers are not making decisions on you or your loved one. Now, there's somebody sitting out there, you're not going to raise your hand and you're not going to say it out loud. Somebody sitting there saying, but I got 5 kids and they all get along and they know exactly what I want, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't need to put it in writing because they're all going to come together and do what I want them to do. Let me give you one quick thing. I need to finish that point.
Now, you should do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. Those 4 or 5 kids, they all say today,
Yeah.
I know exactly what mama wants, I know what daddy wants, I know exactly what mom and daddy want. But on the day that the doctors are saying, I need you to make this decision, I promise you, one of them is gonna go, I know that's what mom said, but I just can't, I don't feel comfortable and I don't want to make that decision. I'm not able to do that. Put it in writing. Because if those family members cannot come to an agreement, you may end up in court. And with a court-appointed guardian, the decision maker between your family member. Now remember, you are at a point where you cannot make decisions for yourself, meaning you are potentially hospitalized, unconscious, maybe on death's door, who knows? Do you really want your family to have to worry about going to court to fight for a court-appointed guardian when they can just be sitting at your bedside loving on you? Yes, ma'am. So there can be challenges. Let's be real. Folks always still hope. Somebody will fight, but that's why you put it in writing, because it's much harder for them to fight against your legal documents that you have put in place, that you have had signed and notarized, than to just go back and say, "Well, Mama always told me." Have y'all seen that Trust and Will commercial? Not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. My granny, before she passed away, she was 99 and a half years old. And Sloan said 99 and a half, you do. When they called me, and some of y'all may know this because I was with me through that process. They called to tell me that they're sending her out, 911. She was having difficulty breathing. And then they called me back and they said, well, she stopped breathing and EMS was about to come in. And I said, no, she's 99 and a half. has a living will, and she has a healthcare power of attorney named me. And they said, well, they've already started, so we can't stop. They had to get a doctor's order. Thankfully, Randy was already in Jesus' arms. She was like, no, I ain't going back. I'm good. And she stayed right where she was. Because I was always worried that I'd be a girl when she came back. What happened? You supposed to look out for me. This is why it's important to fill out these documents. Give a copy to the person named as your healthcare power of attorney. Because I had my copy upstairs and the building go, no, I got paperwork that says this is not what you give a copy to your primary care physician in the hospital system where you. You keep the original. A copy to the person or persons you name as your power of attorney for healthcare. And the reason I say persons because I want you to have a backup or two. Everybody should have their own copy. Your primary care physician should have a copy. Hospital system. Or if you're going in for a procedure, a lot of the hospitals are now saying, do you have these documents already in place? Make sure you have a copy to give to them so they can scan it into your chart. And the reason I say make sure you have a backup, I know I have some couples in the room, husbands and wives, significant others, and y'all probably did the really easy thing that made a lot of sense and said, okay, we'll just name each other. Okay, but what happens when something happens to the other one? Who's gonna speak for you? Well, I'm not even saying that. If something happens and that person is now incapable of making decisions on your behalf and you get sick, now neither one of you has somebody to speak for you. So you always want to have a backup and not just be each other's power of attorney for healthcare. So that may be the primary. So with my godfather, my aunt was a primary and the two cousins were the backups. But we all work together anyway, so it all worked out just fine. But you always want to have that ram in the bush, amen? Now, the power of attorney for healthcare, that designates the who you want to speak on your behalf. The living will is the what. And most people will have both documents, but I have some people who say, I don't have anybody, I don't trust anybody, I don't know anybody. Well, if you don't know who, you definitely will make sure you have the what. The living will is what says, I don't want to be on a ventilator, I don't want artificial nutrition, I don't want artificial hydration, I don't want all that extreme stuff. I want you just let nature take its course so I go home and repeat the Lord.
This may be my mother had set that up. But when the doctor comes in, one of the first things they ask him about doctor. My sister and I say, when you get to that point, we'll make the decision first and saying, here, take the document, and you just pull the plug, or tell us when you get ready for it. So, good or bad, right or wrong, that's how we chose it.
But you have the document.
We have the document.
Okay, that's the key difference.
Yes.
You have the document, it's already that you can hand it to them and say, this is what she wants